Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Agatha All Along. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do appreciate that we stayed in this police procedural a lot longer than I thought we would. Because, I mean, obviously, we only saw like a snippet of it in the teaser trailer, which I should also note, I've only seen the teaser trailer. I've avoided every other clip and trailer out there. But so the only thing I've seen is the teaser trailer. So knowing we're start off with kind of like this like procedural crime drama, and I don't know if it's intentionally, but it feels like obviously like it's meant to be exaggerated. Like it's supposed to be kind of like cheesy a little bit. How like it's like, yeah, these are like, it's supposed to be like the stereotypes of a crime drama, and her being like, oh yeah, I'm kind of like that rogue cop. I got suspended for punching a suspect and whatnot. And she shows up in the crime scene and finds Wanda's body. I love how they like the camera angle and everything, where it's like it's behind Agatha, or rather Agnes, and you don't see, every angle doesn't let you see the body's face. So I was like, oh, creatively nice kind of way of working around that. I thought it was interesting because like the biggest question was, okay, so where we left off in WandaVision, the only person that was magicked into like being a different person was Agnes. Everyone else in Westview was free. So now you're like, why is everyone else like, is the spell distorted and now it's spreading to the rest of the town? Are they kind of getting enveloped in it or what? Which we get an answer to that near the end of the episode, but I'll save that for then. So, but that was my biggest question, like, is the spell leaking out from Agatha and affecting everyone else? They're kind of getting drawn into this, we're talking about to steal a phrase from across the pond. I mean, it's a medical phrase in general, but still, it's being used. It's a fully ado situation where it's kind of a shared madness. So I was wondering if that was the case, but either way, I thought it was interesting where Herb said this line of, you're not acting like yourself, which once again, that line at the time, you're like, what does that necessarily mean? And then you have context later on. But at the time when she was like, oh, what, I'm not all smiling and stuff, which I'm like, okay, that's funny. I was like, is that supposed to be a wink and nod to who she was at the end of WandaVision? Because they even said like, oh, we have this book card that's been, well, later on she runs into Dottie at the because she's a librarian, and it's like, this book was stolen like 3 years ago. I was like, okay, so is that implying like in universe it's been 3 years since WandaVision, which it has been as well. I believe, didn't WandaVision come out 2021? So I believe it actually has been 3 years. Well, outside of the TV show, but also in universe, which is interesting. But because that would also mean like it's been at least, well, because I'm assuming that's kind of implying like, because even though there was time in between, I guess like in universe that must mean like Multiverse of Madness was like 3 years ago. Because once again, not everything takes place in the year. Like, I mean, obviously, even prior to the fact is we are in like 2026, 2027 now in the MCU. Like, even then, it's like, even before now, like, none of the movies necessarily took place in the years they actually came out. So, it probably is still a thing of like WandaVision, even though like Multiverse of Madness came out in 2022, like, in universe, it was probably like the same year as WandaVision, probably like a couple months later, if not weeks later. Probably the events of Spider-Man No Way Home happened in between that. Like everything happened in that, like probably like the couple months in between both WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness. So I guess that's kind of like the 3 year. So it's been not unless that technically, canonically takes place like even later in the timeline. Because I'm about to say for it to be 3 years, because I'm like, why is it happening now? Because there's lines later on it's like, okay, this has only been something that's been happening for the past couple of days. So I'm like, why now? If Wanda's been dead for a while, so that must mean like this, like not unless this is taking place like, not unless there was a bigger time gap in between WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness. I don't know. That's where you kind of, the timeline there is kind of a little fuzzy for me, but whatever the case may be, because I'm like, maybe there's extenuating circumstances. Maybe it's just a thing of the spell has been on backup juice for the past 3 years, and now it's finally starting to wane enough that she's able to kind of like, it's starting to fail because it's been running on backup juice the entire time. Maybe that's the implication. Either way, my getting back on track, I loved, like I said, just the cheesiness of like her just being this hard detective of like, I'm gonna get the information I want. Where were you between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m.? And it's like, all right, fine. Go to this book section, which she goes to, which I think is so interesting. I'm like, okay, so this section of books was burned, but you don't think it's weird that literally no other section of the bookcase, it's specifically this one. I'm like, bookshelves are made of wood, so wouldn't one shelf catch on fire lead to another? I mean, I guess you could get to it in time, but it's like, and that one guy like creepily whispering to her, and she's like, what? And he just bounces. Because at first when they show the bookshelf from behind, I thought like, ooh, that's creepy. But then you see the front, and it's like, oh no, the entire shelf is burnt. I thought that was like a trick or whatever, and like the back of it was like perfect, like meant to be like that, but the front looked perfectly fine. I thought that's what it was going to be, but no. She also found what we found out later on is a locket at the crime scene with a piece of hair in it, which I'm like, I wonder, is that hers, or it must have some connection to it, because she was immediately drawn to it, and the moment she saw the hair in it, which I'm like, well, we know her character has a child named Nicholas Scratch, but that's her familiar, so I don't know if like maybe she actually did have a child before all of this. Maybe a long time ago, maybe before she killed her entire coven, which I think that included her mother. It's been a hot minute since I saw WandaVision, so do forgive me if I'm remembering something Agatha's backstory in that regard. But like, I remember she killed like her entire coven, but like I said, I'm pretty sure like the head of it was her mom, wasn't it? But I'm like, I don't know, like maybe she was a mom at that time and lost her child. We'll definitely learn about Agatha's backstory as we progress, but I don't know. I just like the hair and everything made me go like, it does seem significant. I wonder, did she have a child at one point in time and lost them? And even though, I mean, maybe Nicholas, her familiar. I mean, because I'm pretty sure like the rabbit's supposed to be her familiar, but I can't remember. I'm pretty sure his name is Nicholas Scratch, but it could be like she had a child named Nikki, who she lost and named her familiar after, or maybe Nicholas, her familiar, is her child or something like that. Both in like, oh, the familial sense of like, yeah, this is my, in familiar sense of like, as a witch, this my familiar is like family to me, or maybe it's like a thing of maybe he got turned into the familiar of Nicholas. I don't know. I'm spitballing here. Do forgive me. I wasn't expecting Aubrey Plaza's character to show up the way she did, just like popped up, and it's like, yeah, once again, your stereotype of a crime drama, which I also love the opening credits, doing a little bit of a WandaVision, which was like, oh, this is playing off of, that was playing off of like classic sitcoms and stuff. This is playing off just this stereotype of like crime dramas, and it's just like, right, every character's name is actually in the opening credits instead of like, it's like, oh, and it's like, oh, based on the Danish series WandaVision, which I don't know if that's, like, I'm sure that's like there's a show called The Killing. I don't know if it's supposed to be based on that. I'm fairly certain, because I know, like, The Killing is like the North American version, but I know that's based off I don't think it's Swedish. I do believe it's a Danish show. I can't remember its name off the top of my head. I don't know if it's specifically that, because there are a few shows that are like, yeah, like there are North American made versions of, so I thought that was interesting. Like, the fact that they chose specifically like, oh, a Danish based on the Danish series, that I'm like, that felt too specific. So that's the series that comes to my mind, The Killing. But I don't know if that's what they're like winking at, like paying an homage to in that regard, or is it just like a lot of crime? Maybe there's a lot more like crime dramas that are like adaptations of like something else, like European, that ended up getting adapted, like, or remade, like, and they got a North American version of it or something. I don't know. But either way, before I went on that diatribe, I love the whole, like, I always love that in, crime dramas or procedurals where it's like, oh my god, the feds are involved now, because under the soil under the victim's fingernails leads back to like somewhere in Europe. So it's kind of like, but it's like, would the Fed, I mean, I guess the feds would still swoop in even under that regard, but it's like, I actually don't fully know the full scale. Like, I know across the states, but I'm like, I don't know what the feds jurisdiction is. But either way, I thought it was interesting because I was wondering, like everyone else is under the spell. I thought maybe Aubrey Plaza's character was too, but then she was poking at. I mean, I know from the teaser trailer that she was telling her to wake up, but I didn't know what was going on. So I guess she knew, like, okay, you're under the spell, like. Okay, so it's like, oh, so you think you're a cop, and so it's like, okay, so she started playing along, like, okay, sure, let's kind of keep this on the case. I was actually initially wondering, like, what their history was, because I was like, is this an ex-lover situation? I was catching those vibes, but like maybe I misread it. I mean, there's still a possibility of it, because later on she says that line of, I do have a heart, it's black, and it beats for you, where it's just like, oh, that's all I think about is going after you because you screwed me over in the past. Like, either that's like romantically, or just like, no, we were allies, or just we knew each other, or associates, and you screwed me over. It could be anything. But like I said, I was catching some maybe like ex, vibes there, but maybe I was completely misreading that. Well, we'll see whether there's more context later on to give us definitive answer on what their dynamic and relationship is. Obviously, we saw more of the Westview people. We saw Norm, who's the jeweler. We saw Jones, who is the chief and everything. So, and also, I was waiting, like the book from that was kind of stolen 3 years ago and stuff, and then she started writing it out. I'm looking at the name Andrew Ugo, and I'm like, is it going to be an anagram or something? Like, what's going on there? And I wasn't even paying attention until she started underlining the letters. I was like, Darkhold. I knew there had to be something there, but I wasn't expecting, like, okay. But it's like, yeah, that's a classic, like, the first letter, put them together, and it spells out Darkhold. So I'm assuming that's supposed to be like, right, that's the missing book from 3 years ago. That's the burnt bookshelf. But yeah, as I brought up before, she also has like a dead child, it seems like, which I was wondering, I'm like, what concocted it? Because I was like, was that like some after, like, once again, why did the circumstances turn into what they did? Is it like some distorted version? Like, what's the spell Wanda did? Like, it held on for a while, but after all these years, like, it wasn't a great spell in that regards of, it didn't have like enough juice behind it to last forever, and because it was on its last legs, it started distorting. So I'm curious, like, is that something Wanda had included in that spell? I mean, because we don't really know what Agnes was naturally, because the only taste we got of that was at the very end of the episode. And it's like, well, Agnes was kind of playing in, like, the character of Agnes was supposed to be kind of who she was pretending to be throughout all of WandaVision to some extent. So, but my point was, like, did Wanda add that extra thing in there because it's like, right, she had to give up her... Well, to be fair, that was before she had to fully give up her children when she trapped Agnes in that spell. So that was then. So it's like she hadn't quite given up her children yet, but I was wondering if it's like, oh, like Wanda lost her children, so now Agatha, kind of has to do the same thing in this, like, twisted spell of Agnes. Or was that a little bit of who she really was bleeding through the spell of, like, did she have a son? Like, the questions I brought up, I had broached earlier in the recording. But either way, she gets visited by Aubrey Plaza's character, and it's just, once again, she's like, do you even know why you hate me? And she's like, no, I don't. And I'm like, I'm wondering where that's going. What is your connection? And then all of a sudden she finds the kid breaking into her place. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting this to be how you two meet. So she's chasing after him. When the car hits him, I was like, oh, I thought that was like Aubrey Plaza's character, but it's like, no, it's Deborah Jo Rupp's character. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So she takes him back to the station, and she's interrogating him, and then, like I said, it's extra cheesy, her kicking over his chair, threatening him. But then, like, things get trippy when she's like, look at this, like, and I love that she's like, once again, it's supposed to be cheesy and exaggerated, where she's like, oh, I think you're you're lying, like, oh, you were asleep in bed, and starts yelling at him, like, look at these photos and this body. He's like, body? Why are you showing me pictures of flowers? I was like, ooh, I love the trippiness, bringing in that flair and feel of WandaVision, and then also it's like, he's like, why you keep looking at that painting? And she's like, what? And turns to the glass two-way mirror, and it's like, nah, like Aubrey's character is going, but also like the mirror's been replaced by a painting, and he's chanting. And I guess I'm wondering, did it not work or why? Because like, how is it that like he's chanting and stuff, but nothing happens, and like maybe it was happening, and maybe he's just I don't know like why nothing happened. She was able to just kind of arrest him, so she's kind of like, no, the body's got to be real. So she shows up at the morgue, and when she does, the body's not initially there, but then it appears. And what we saw in the teaser trailer of it, the name Wanda Maximoff there, and Aubrey's character showing up, being like, okay, you need to tear out through that spell, and obviously transforming. Because we saw in the teaser, it was like she specifically like the teaser ends with like that scene ends with her going back to her black and white character from WandaVision, but it's like it's her literally tearing through every character she was playing in WandaVision until she ultimately gets to the black and white, and then sees her name and remembers, and then she strips off her clothes, and then they're like, we only saw her from her neck up, but I was like, did you fully strip down, or are you completely naked now? And it's like, lo and behold, which is very befitting, because it's like, oh, everything's been stripped bare, and now you are in your birthday suit, you are in your form, and then literally walks out. And then we find out the truth. Herb's like, whoa, what are you doing? And we find out she's been a decent neighbor for the past 3 years, that basically it's only in the past couple days she started losing her mind. So everything we've seen so far has been everyone placating her, which is so interesting and weird to think about. The fact is, everyone was just kind of okay with Agnes. They're like, well, it's just kind of a funny thing to think about. They've been living with her for 3 years, because they're like, honestly, you were a pretty good neighbor up until like, because even when he responded to her, like when she first up, he was like, hey, neighbor. And now every interaction kind of makes sense why everyone's acting so weird towards her and stuff. It's like, because everyone else is guess what? So the spell never leaked out. It's just her being crazy, and so everyone else was placating her. They're like, well, she's kind of acting a little crazy, so let's play into the delusion. So everyone was playing along. That's why Herb was like, oh, you're not acting like yourself. And it's like, yeah. So, and now finding out, and I love that it's like Wanda, and he's like, whoa. We kind of don't say her name around here. It's like, I love that she's kind of like, she's like Candyman or Beetlejuice, or right? No, she's Voldemort. We don't say her name around here, so I love that. Just like her just figuring things out. I even love her being like, oh yeah, power. You seem different. You seem powerful, and she's like powerful, and kind of realizing like, oh, things are off, and the neighbors are looking at her because she's like stark naked. And I had the same thought immediately. I had this thought recently when I was like watching this past season of The Boys, where I was like, was that Erin Moriarty, or was that a body double with like there was a nude scene? And I was like thinking the same thing here, which I was like, oh, you could get away with that on Disney Plus, okay. But I was like immediately like, oh, I wonder, is that Catherine Hahn's blood, or is that actually a stone double? I mean, I feel comfortable since we're in this conversation. I mean, Catherine Hahn's already very attractive, but I was just like, she has a really nice body. I don't think I've ever seen her. I mean, she's probably does stuff where she might have been nude before, and I just don't know anything off the top of my head. So this was kind of the first time I've ever seen her body. So I was like, oh, she's a really nice body. Either way, she goes back into her house, realizes like, hey, I have no powers, goes downstairs, realizes the dark hold is going. It's like, cool, I've been robbed. And, hey, honey, like, grabs onto Nicholas and is scratching him and stuff. So finds the kid who tried to rob her, which I'm like, is that what he was looking for? Did he not know that the dark hold was stolen from her? Like, what was keeping... Like, why did he show up now? Like, why has no one come to her in, like, 3 years? But it could be, like, as Aubrey's character kind of implies, like, she's kind of had, like, a barrier kind of hiding herself for so long. Maybe Wanda's spell... Once again, maybe the reason why everything was so distorted for her and her, like, reality started blurring like that, and maybe why now is because the spell was messing up, and it kind of allowed anyone looking for Agatha to track her down here in Westview. So they ultimately do. And yeah, Aubrey's character has come to kill her. Once again, we don't know what the beef is, but it's just like so excited to like kill her. And I love Agatha being like, oh, come on, like you want to fight me at my formidable form. You don't want to just make this easy, you know. You love the fight between us. You don't want to just kill me easy. And it's like, all right, fine, I'll let you live, but I'm gonna make sure I let everyone know who you are, or who you are. And it's like who? It's like, oh, the Salem Seven. It's like, I mean, do we really need to do that? And it's like, yeah, we're gonna do that. So you were in your vulnerable state now. Like, yeah, you've screwed over so many people over the centuries that now you're vulnerable. Everybody's coming for the smoke, you know. So, and you've also got a teenager who you kind of, and you're like, oh, when I arrested you in my delusions, I actually kind of ended up, you know, kidnapping you. Which, using the word delusions is really interesting because, once again, I mean, other people felt the same way where they saw Aubrey Plaza in like the teaser and stuff, being like, oh, it's giving Lenny vibes. If you've ever seen Legion, like, you know, her. So this isn't her first run in Marvel properties, but it's like, yeah, if you've seen her in Legion, it kind of gives those vibes to some extent. Obviously, like, Lenny's a very different character from the character she's playing now, but I'm interested to find out this character's circumstances, what her history is with Agatha, and also, well, because I just remember, because, like, the kid who broke in is, like, he's looking for the road, and I guess, like, maybe one of the things Agatha has, besides, maybe you don't just need the Darkhold, maybe, like, she has with the Darkhold gone, everyone needs a new means of getting some power, and that's where the Witch's Road comes into play. So maybe she's one of the few people that has maps to the Witch's Road amongst her stuff or something. But who knows? It might all be gone now, because once the Darkhold was taken, like, maybe Wanda, before bouncing in from Westview, destroyed every other book she had, just so if she ever became Agatha again, she'd never have any of the resources again. Maybe, I don't know. I'm spitballing here. Either way, I thought this was kind of a really nice start to the show. Like I said, I wasn't expecting the procedural element to go on the way as long as it did, but I like that. I like we spent time into that, and it added layers to when you find out, oh, it was only her. No one else was dragged into the spell. They were just placating her, which I think, once again, from an outside perspective of, oh yeah, here's this. I mean, I guess they know she doesn't have any powers, so they weren't worried, especially, but it's like, I guess it was weird the first couple weeks, maybe month or so, but eventually you're like, all right, cool. Let's just go along with it. It is kind of twisted where you're kind of like, oh, you guys kind of went along with it, but you have issues with Wanda, but you also realize like Agatha's kind of dangerous too. So you're like, okay, we'll just play along with it. It's just kind of effed up when you know someone's kind of brainwashing. You're just kind of like, okay, and just accept it, and just like, yeah, she seemed a decent person now. So you were like, why fight it? So why worry about who she was when she's actually a good person now? So, and it's not like they could do much about it. So it's just like, hey, 3 years later, they're just living it up until she starts acting crazy, and you're like, well, let's play into it and hope she doesn't snap or something, you know, pull a Wanda on us or something. So either way, I'm very excited to see where the next episode takes us. Obviously, this was a back-to-back episode drop, so I'm excited to ultimately see where episode 2 ends up taking us going forward with this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.